The first step in this process would be to create a new form. So let's go new form and let's give it a title. This is going to be well, we can title it here. This will be daily info. We're going to collect daily info, and then we can click here. That makes it turn into daily info. So now we have our form. Let's go to the settings first off, and let's change some things. We're not going to make this a quiz, but we do want to collect email addresses. Yes, that's on. We don't want it to be able to be edited. We're going to restrict it to our domain, and we want to collect email addresses, and we want to make questions required by default. So we want to make sure that those are all in the on position, and then we can add our questions. Our first question, and I'm just going to call this question 1, and we're going to add a few options here. And then we're going to duplicate this. This is required, so we'll duplicate this. We'll change this to question 2. We'll duplicate this and change this to question 3. And we'll duplicate this and we'll change this to question 4. And then we will make this a short answer. Okay, so there's our form. Now we go to responses, and the first thing we're going to want to do is actually collect some data. So option 1, option 2, option 3, and then we're going to put in some gobbledygook. We'll go ahead and submit, and then we're going to want to come here and take a look at the spreadsheet, and we'll go ahead and create that. And this will be our daily info responses. There's our first form data right there. I like to come back here and make sure that this is up to date. So there's my form, there's my spreadsheet. So in our next phase, the teacher would send this copy of this forms to all the students or administrators to teachers, however you're using it. And in this case, I sent an invitation to one of the users, the student. They fill out the form. We'll go ahead and, this student's going to select these things and maybe put in no, not today, whatever the form is really collecting. And before I submit that, let's come back over here. I'll go ahead and submit. And then you'll see it pop in immediately. So now on my form collection sheet, form responses, I have now collected data from 3 different people. So let's see how we could proceed further with this and see how we could use this now in a couple of different ways. And let's start by showing you how you might use Data Studio to create this system. So let's go to Data Studio. And we should be Data Studio, and we should be able to create a new project. And in this case, I'm going to connect to Google Sheets, and I'm going to use this daily info responses. It's automatically found my most recent issue here, my most recent spreadsheet, and I'm going to work on the form responses sheet. So go ahead and add that. And continue. And so immediately what I have here is a table of information. So what I can do is bring in question 1 and question 2 and question 3 and question 4. And I've already got, well, let's bring in the timestamp as well. And maybe let's move the timestamp up to the top. Let's take our table, let's make it as big as we want it to be. Let's right click and resize the columns and distribute evenly. There we go. So here's our data that we've collected on the form, and now it's in Data Studio, and we can doctor this up and make it look however we want. But initially, I want to take a look at a feature in here that lets us only allow access based on an email address. So the next step to have this so that you can set it up so that your users can only see their data is to select your data source, and you do that with this pencil, edit the data source, and then you filter by email. And if you do this, filter by viewer email, and we have to select the email address field. And if we say done, this report wants to use your information to personalize what you see. So notice as soon as I do this, we're only going to see the data for my responses. So I'll allow that, and done. And now notice the data is automatically filtered, and all I see is my own responses. So let's take this sheet and let's now share it. And let's change the access on this to, let's go ahead and change the access on this to anyone in Train.EdMaestro can view this report. Go ahead and click Save. And close. And let's get a link to the report and copy the link. Now, let's go back to my other user, and we'll go ahead and paste that dashboard or that Data Studio report in. Now, when it comes in, what's happening for the first time that a user uses this, they're going to have to click Allow to grant access, and when we do that, notice now I'm only seeing the data on this report. I'm only seeing the data for student 2. Now if I come back to this user, the 12th user, in this Data Studio report, I'm only seeing the information that I've imported here. So let's see what happens if I submit another response. And this is, again, the 12th user, 2, 4, whatever we put in here, my blah, 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 and go ahead and submit that. And let's actually come in here and do another one for this student 2. And we're collecting data on a daily basis, and we go blah, blah, blah. Now when we come back and take a look here, of course, we see another one for 12 and another one for student 2. And if we come in here to my daily info and I refresh my data, I see a couple of responses from 12. And if I come back here and refresh my data, oh, now here's an interesting case here. Because the student 2 only has view access, we can't get that refresh button. We could try to refresh it this way, and yeah, okay, that does it. So there you see, now I'm just looking at the data here. So as we build out our Data Studio report, you can see that we could do this in a way that inside of our domain, we can collect data using a form, and we can display the data per user using this feature of Data Studio where I can only see what I have submitted. That's one way we can go ahead and do this sharing of the information that we're collecting on a daily basis. So as we can see in this example, and looking at how you can look at the data for each user, what we've lost is the ability for the owner of this Data Studio report to be able to see all of the data. So what we're going to have to do here is go ahead and create another Data Studio report where we don't have that. So real quickly, we can build this out, our daily info, form responses. We'll go ahead and add that. And so here's our report. We can basically build this out the same way we did. We're gonna put in our timestamp and maybe move that up to the first, and then we'll quickly add our question 1, question 2, question 3, and question 4. Real quick to build this out. We can drop this over like this. We can right click and resize our columns, distribute evenly. So now we can see all of the data. So this report is the admin daily info. And this one we wouldn't really need to share with anyone, but now I'd be able to do some assessments here and take a look at some charts here. For instance, try to figure out, like we could add a chart. Maybe we want to be able to chart some of this data, and we want to see question number 1. Well, first of all, we can look at that, but what I'd rather see is what's the information coming in on question 1. We're getting option 2 and option 1 and so forth. So that's going to allow us to use Data Studio and have 2 different reports. I can leave this. What I could do now to look at the 2 reports is go ahead and duplicate this Data Studio connection here, and then I could click back here and I could look at my daily info. Now when I open up daily info, notice I only see the information on my submissions, but on the daily, the admin one, I can see everything. What I might do here in my resize columns is fit to data. That might make a little more sense with that. And I may do the same thing here and resize columns, fit to data. There we go. So now you can see the 2 different reports. One of them I see only my own. The other I see all the data as I'm collecting it.